The corridor was silent, except for the sound of expensive heels clicking against marble. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. The kind of morning that starts ordinary and ends with whispers that travel through palace walls for years to come. Sergeant James Mitchell had served the royal family for 12 years. He'd carried countless bags, opened thousands of doors, and stood in the rain more times than he could count. He never complained. That was the job. That was the honor. But on this particular morning, standing outside the East Wing entrance, he made a choice that would cost him everything. The day had started normally enough. Kate, the Princess of Wales, had attended a children's rugby match in Cardiff the week before. The photos were everywhere. Her genuine smile. The way she knelt in the mud to talk to a young boy who'd scored his first try. The warmth in her eyes as she hugged him, not caring about the dirt on her coat. The public loved it. The internet exploded with praise. Even people who didn't usually follow royal news shared the images with captions like, "This is what real royalty looks like." But inside the palace, something else was happening. Camilla, the queen consort, had been scheduled to attend that same rugby event. It was in her calendar first. The invitations had been sent. Then, quietly, things changed. Kate went instead. The official reason was scheduling conflicts. But everyone who worked behind those gilded doors knew the truth. It wasn't a conflict. It was a choice. And if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. You won't believe how this unfolds. The morning after the photos went viral, Camilla arrived at the palace earlier than usual. Her assistant carried 3 designer shopping bags. Her expression was tight. The kind of tight that comes from reading comments on social media that compare you unfavorably to someone younger. More natural. She walked past a portrait of Diana. She always walked quickly past that. Portrait Sergeant Mitchell was assigned to assist her that morning. Standard protocol. He stood at attention as she approached, her assistant struggling slightly with the bags. "Take these to my study," Camilla said, not looking at him. Her voice was clipped, professional, cold. The assistant extended the bags toward him. Mitchell looked at the bags, then at Camilla, then back at the bags. He thought about Kate kneeling in the mud with that little boy. He thought about the videos he'd seen of Camilla barely acknowledging staff members. He thought about the rumors that had circulated for weeks about her trying to undermine Kate's public appearances, and he thought about his daughter. Who had Kate's poster on her bedroom wall? "No, ma'am," he said quietly. The assistant froze. Camilla stopped walking. The corridor seemed to hold its breath. "Excuse me?" Camilla turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. "I said no, ma'am." His voice was steady, respectful, but firm. "With respect, carrying personal shopping bags isn't part of my official duties to the royal family." It was technically true. Royal guards were assigned to security and official functions, not personal errands. But everyone knew the lines blurred. Everyone bent the rules for the family. Everyone except Sergeant Mitchell. Not today, not after the Rugby Snub. Asterisk, asterisk, the silence that followed was the kind that makes your heart pound in your ears. Camilla's face changed color, not red with anger. Something worse. A pale, controlled fury that comes from years of being criticized, compared, and found wanting by a public that never wanted you there in the first place. "You're refusing a direct instruction?" Her voice was quiet, dangerous. "I'm clarifying my role, ma'am." Mitchell kept his eyes forward, military posture perfect. "I'm happy to assist with any official royal duties. Personal shopping falls outside that scope." The assistant's eyes went wide. She'd worked for Camilla for 3 years and had never seen anyone push back like this. Not once. Other staff members had stopped in nearby doorways. Not obviously watching, but listening. Everyone was listening. In palaces, walls have ears, and those ears were very interested in what was happening right now, I see. Camilla's jaw tightened. "And tell me, Sergeant, when the Princess of Wales asks you to assist with her personal items, do you refuse her as well?" There it was. The real question. The one that mattered. Mitchell had carried Kate's bags dozens of times. Just last month, He'd helped her with gifts she'd brought back from a hospital visit. She'd thanked him by name. Asked about his daughter's piano recital, because she'd remembered him mentioning it 3 weeks earlier. That was the difference. The Princess of Wales doesn't ask me to carry her shopping bags. Ma'am, he said simply. She carries her own. The truth of it hung in the air like smoke. It was true. Everyone knew it was true. Kate was photographed constantly carrying her own bags, helping load her own car, walking without an entourage when she could. It was one of the things the public loved about her. She didn't act like she was above ordinary tasks. Camilla's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're dismissed," she said coldly. "Report to your commanding officer. Immediately." Micho saluted, turned, walked away with his head high. Behind him, he heard Camilla say something sharp to her assistant. He heard the rustle of bags being picked up. And he heard something else. Whispers. The sound of staff. Members who'd witnessed everything already spreading the word by the time Mitchell reached the security office. His phone was buzzing with messages from other guards and staff. "Did you really refuse? Is it true? You're a legend." His commanding officer, Colonel Davies, was waiting for him. The older man's face was unreadable. "Sit down, Sergeant." He'd known this was coming. You don't say no to a member of the royal family and walk away without consequences. "Do you want to explain what just happened?" Davies asked. "I followed protocol, sir. Personal shopping assistance isn't part of my assigned duties."
Ow.
Davies leaned back in his chair. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "You know, you've just made my job incredibly difficult," he said. But there was no anger in his voice. "I've got 3 different senior staff members calling me right now, demanding you be disciplined." "Yes, sir." "I understand, but here's the thing, Mitchell." Davies folded his hands on his desk. "You're technically right. And more importantly, you're not the only one who's been feeling this way." Mitchell looked up, surprised. "Half the staff is ready to walk out," Davies continued. "Not publicly. Not dramatically. But morale has been at an all-time low since the rugby incident. People are tired of watching someone who actually cares about this job get undermined by someone who seems to care more about appearances than duty." He pulled out a file. "Mitchell's service record. You have a spotless record. 12 years of exemplary service. 3 commendations. Never a single complaint." Davies tapped the file. "But this is going to escalate." "You know that, I know, sir." "The Queen Consort is going to want you removed. Possibly discharged?" Mitchell nodded. He'd expected as much. His career was probably over. But some things mattered more than careers. His daughter's respect for one. "However," Davies said, and his tone changed, "you're not the only one with a voice in this. And there are people in this palace with more influence than the Queen Consort." Mitchell's heart skipped. "Sir, the Princess of Wales heard what happened. She wants to speak with you." 20 minutes later, Mitchell stood outside a private sitting room in the West Wing. His palms were sweating. In 12 years of service, he'd been in the same room as Kate dozens of times. But he'd never been summoned to speak with her privately. Guards didn't get private audiences with royals. Not unless something serious was happening. The door opened. Kate's private secretary, a woman named Eleanor, with kind eyes and steel in her spine, gestured him inside. "The princess will see you now." The room was smaller than he expected, comfortable. There were children's drawings on a side table, a half-finished cup of tea, books stacked neatly on a shelf. It felt like a real person's space, not a museum display. Kate stood by the window looking out at the gardens. She wore a simple blue dress. No jewelry except her engagement ring. Her hair was pulled back loosely. She turned when he entered. "Sergeant Mitchell, thank you for coming." Her voice was warm, genuine. "Please, sit down, ma'am. I'd prefer to stand." She smiled slightly. "I insist." "This isn't a formal meeting." Sat awkwardly on the edge of an armchair. Kate sat across from him, leaning forward slightly. Her expression was concerned. "I heard what happened this morning," she said. "I want you to know that I think you showed tremendous courage."
Ow.
Mitchell blinked. Of all the things he'd expected her to say, that wasn't one of them. "Ma'am, I may have overstepped, you didn't. She cut him off gently but firmly. You did exactly what you should have done. You followed protocol and maintained your dignity. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I also want you to know that what happened with the rugby event wasn't my intention to undermine anyone. The invitation came to me directly from the charity. They specifically requested my attendance because of my work with children's sports programs. Mitchell nodded. He believed her. Everyone who worked closely with Kate knew she didn't play political games. She just did her job. But I'm aware, Kate continued, her voice quieter now, that my acceptance of that invitation created tension. And I'm aware that you and others on staff have been caught in the middle of something that should never have involved you. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the perfectly manicured gardens. When I married into this family, I promised myself something. She didn't turn around. I promised I would never treat the people who work here as invisible. As servants? As anything less than valued colleagues who make everything we do possible? Mitchell felt something catch in his throat. My children will learn the same thing, Kate said. They'll learn that the people who guard us, who cook for us, who maintain these buildings, are worthy of the same respect we expect for ourselves. She turned back to face him. What you did today reminded everyone of that. You reminded us that respect goes both ways, that titles don't erase the need for basic human decency. Ma'am, I'm likely going to lose my position over this. No. Kate's voice was firm. You're not. The Queen Consort has requested my dismissal. I'm aware. And I've asked to speak with His Majesty about it.
Oh, Mitchell's eyes widened.
Kate was going to the king. For a guard. For him, ma'am, you don't need to? Yes, I do.
I'll not.
She sat back down, her gaze direct. Because if I don't, then everything I claim to stand for is just words. Just good publicity. And I refuse to be that kind of person. There was steel in her voice now. The same steel that had helped her navigate nearly 13 years of constant media scrutiny, public criticism, and family drama. You stood up for something you believed was right. Even though it cost you, Kate said. The least I can do is stand up for you.
Up.
Before Mitchell could respond, Eleanor knocked and entered. Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the situation is escalating. The Queen Consort's office has issued a formal complaint. They're demanding immediate disciplinary action. Kate stood. Then I suppose I need to make a few calls. She looked at Mitchell. Go back to your duties, Sergeant. Regular schedule. If anyone questions you, refer them to me. It's an instruction from a senior member of the royal family. She smiled slightly. I believe you said you're happy to follow those. Mitchell stood, saluted, and left the room. In the hallway, he passed two other guards. They both gave him slight nods of respect. No words. They didn't need words. Everyone in the palace knew what side they were on. By that afternoon, the story had leaked. Not the full details, but enough. A trusted palace source told a journalist that there was significant tension between the Queen Consort and palace, staff over treatment and respect issues. The journalist started making calls, and inside the palace, two very different meetings were taking place. Asterisk in Camilla's private office. The atmosphere was tense. Her senior advisor, a man named Thornton, who'd worked in palace communications for 20 years, sat across from her with a carefully neutral expression. The story is already circulating, he said. We need to control the narrative before it gets worse. Worse. Camilla's voice was sharp. A guard refused a direct instruction. He should be dismissed immediately. End of story, ma'am. With respect, it's not that simple. Thornton pulled out his tablet, showing her social media trends. The rugby incident is still trending. People are comparing photos of you and the Princess of Wales. The public sentiment is not favorable. Camilla's jaw tightened. She didn't need to see the screen. She knew what people were saying. She'd been dealing with unfavorable comparisons for decades. First to Diana, now to Kate. It never ended. If we dismiss Sergeant Mitchell now, Thornton continued carefully, especially after the Princess of Wales has apparently intervened on his behalf, it will look vindictive. It will reinforce the narrative that there's conflict between you and her. There is no conflict, Camilla said coldly. I simply expect staff to do their jobs. The problem, ma'am, is that technically he was doing his job. Royal guards aren't technically required to handle personal shopping. He followed protocol. He was being insubordinate. But he was also making a point that's resonating with staff throughout the palace. We've had 3 different department heads report increased discontent. People are watching how this is handled. Camilla stood, walked to the window. Outside, she could see tourists gathered at the gates, taking photos, hoping for a glimpse of royalty. They loved Kate. They tolerated Camilla. She'd accepted that reality years ago, but it still stung. What do you suggest? She asked quietly. Let it go. Issue a statement saying there was a misunderstanding about duties, that the matter has been resolved internally, and that you have full confidence in palace staff. Absolutely not. Ma'am, I will not be made to look weak. Not again. Thornton was quiet for a moment. Then he said something bold. With respect, ma'am, this isn't about weakness. It's about winning a battle you cannot win. The Princess of Wales has the public's love. She has the king's respect. And now, apparently, she has the loyalty of the palace staff. If you push this, you will lose. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Meanwhile, in a different part of the palace, Kate sat with Prince William in their private apartment. You're really going to push this? William asked. He wasn't questioning her. He was confirming. I have to, Kate said. If I don't, then what message does that send? That staff can be bullied. That they should just accept disrespect because it's easier. William smiled. You know my father is going to be caught in the middle of this. Your father knows how to handle his wife. And he knows the difference between family politics and doing what's right. William's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Speaking of which, he wants to see us both. Now. 10 minutes later, they were in the king's private study. King Charles looked tired. He loved his wife. He also loved his son and daughter-in-law. And he was acutely aware that the monarchy's survival depended on public support that was increasingly fragile. I assume you both know why you're here, he said. The Sergeant Mitchell situation, Kate said. Double quotes. Yes. Camilla wants him dismissed. You've intervened. And now I'm being asked to make a decision that will upset someone I care about no matter what I choose. William spoke up. Father, with respect, this isn't about personal feelings. It's about how we treat the people who work for us. Mitchell was right to refuse. Personal shopping isn't part of his duties. Technically, perhaps. But there are ways to handle these situations diplomatically. He was diplomatic, Kate said firmly. He was respectful. He simply said no. If we punish people for that, then we're saying that staff members have no rights, no boundaries, no dignity. Charles sighed. Catherine, I understand your point. But Camilla is my wife. She's the queen consort. She cannot be publicly undermined. I'm not trying to undermine her. I'm trying to support someone who did the right thing. In doing so, you're creating a situation where it appears the family is divided. Where staff are choosing sides, they've already chosen sides, Father William said quietly. That happened weeks ago when the rugby situation occurred. This is just the moment it became visible. Then at Kate, he saw the determination in their eyes. He also saw something else. They were right. If I overrule Camilla on this, he said slowly, it will cause significant tension in my marriage. If you punish Mitchell, Kate responded gently, it will cause significant tension with your staff, your son, and potentially your public. You have to decide which matters more to the future of the monarchy. It was a bold statement. The kind most people would never dare make to a king. But Kate wasn't most people. Charles was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Camilla, darling, we need to talk. Asterisk, asterisk, the conversation between the king and queen consort lasted 40 minutes. Staff. Members walking past the king's study could hear raised voices. Not shouting, but intense, passionate. The kind of argument that happens when two people who love each other fundamentally disagree, when Camilla emerged. Her face was composed, perfectly made up, but those who knew her well could see the tightness around her eyes, the slight tremble in her hands as she smoothed her jacket she'd lost an hour later. An internal memo was distributed to all palace staff. Following a review of operational protocols, it has been clarified that royal guard duties are limited to official security and ceremonial functions. All staff members are encouraged to maintain appropriate professional boundaries. This matter is considered resolved. It didn't mention Mitchell by name. It didn't mention the incident specifically, but everyone knew what it meant. Mitchell would keep his job. More than that, he'd won. In the palace dining hall where staff ate lunch, the mood shifted. People who'd been walking on eggshells for weeks suddenly stood a little straighter, smiled a little more freely. One of the senior housekeepers, a woman named Margaret who'd worked there for 35 years, raised her teacup in Mitchell's direction when he walked in that afternoon. "To doing the right thing," she said quietly. Others joined her. A silent toast. A moment of solidarity. Mitchell nodded, humble, still processing everything that had happened. But the story wasn't over. That evening, Kate made an unscheduled appearance at a charity gala. She wore a stunning green dress, smiled for the cameras, and gave a speech about dignity, respect, and the importance of standing up for what's right. She never mentioned the palace incident. She didn't have to. The media, already sniffing around the story, picked up on the subtext immediately. Princess Kate speaks on dignity and respect amid palace staff tension. Is there a rift between Kate and Camilla? Palace insiders say staff loyalty shifting to Princess of Wales. The headlines multiplied. Royal commentators analyzed every word, every gesture, every photographed interaction, and the public, already predisposed to love Kate and feel ambivalent about Camilla, took sides. Social media exploded with support for the unnamed guard who'd stood up to the Queen Consort. People shared stories about their own experiences standing up to bullies in the workplace. The hashtag Dignity Matters started trending. Camilla's team went into damage control mode, but it was like trying to hold back the tide. The harder they pushed back against the narrative, the more it confirmed people's suspicions that there was truth to it. Meanwhile, Kate continued her regular schedule. Hospital visits, school events, a meeting with young athletes. Every appearance reinforced the contrast. She was natural, warm. Camilla appeared at a library opening the same week and was met with polite applause. Just polite. Nothing more. The difference was stark. Inside the palace, the impact was even more significant. Staff members who'd been afraid to speak up started, reporting issues they'd previously tolerated. Not publicly, not dramatically, but through proper channels. To supervisors, to HR, to people who could make changes. A senior butler filed a complaint about verbal abuse from a member of Camilla's household staff. 3 housekeepers reported systematic disrespect and unreasonable demands. Driver spoke up about being blamed for traffic delays beyond his control. The floodgates had opened. Colonel Davies, Mitchell's commanding officer, found himself in meeting after meeting addressing staff concerns, and in every meeting he referenced the new protocol guidelines, the ones that had come from the king himself after the Mitchell incident. Staff had rights, boundaries, dignity. It was being taken seriously now. But the most significant change happened quietly. In the small moments, Kate made a point to visit the staff areas more often, not for photo opportunities, just to say hello, to ask about people's families, to remember names and details. She brought her children with her sometimes. George, Charlotte, and Louis learned to shake hands with guards, to thank housekeepers, to treat everyone with respect. It was deliberate, intentional. Kate was building something. She was building loyalty. And Camilla, watching from a distance, understood with perfect clarity what was happening. She was being outmaneuvered, not through drama or confrontation, but through simple kindness. Through being the kind of person people wanted to support. 2 months after the incident, Mitchell was awarded a commendation for distinguished service. The ceremony was small, private, but Kate attended. She shook his hand, thanked him personally, and said something that only he heard. Reminded all of us why we're here. Thank you for that. Mitchell went home that night and told his daughter about his day. She hugged him tight and said, "I'm proud of you. Dad, that was worth more than any medal." But the story still had one more chapter. Asterisk 6 months after the incident. Something unexpected happened. Camilla requested a private meeting with Mitchell. When the message came through official channels, his first instinct was suspicion. Was this a trap? A final move in a game he'd thought was over? But the request was formal, professional, and it came with a note that read simply, "At your convenience." "If you're willing," Mitchell agreed. They met in a neutral space. A small conference room used for staff briefings. No grand setting. No power play. Camilla arrived alone. No assistant. No advisor. Just her. She looked different somehow. Tired. More human. "Sergeant Mitchell, thank you for agreeing to meet with me, ma'am." He stood at attention. "Please sit. This isn't an official meeting." They sat across from each other at the plain table. Camilla was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Then she spoke. "I owe you an apology." Mitchell blinked. Of all the things he'd expected, that wasn't one of them. "What you did that day," she continued, "the way you stood up for yourself, it was difficult for me to accept, not because you were wrong, but because it forced me to look at something I'd been avoiding." Else she folded her hands on the table. "I've spent my entire time in this family being compared to people who are more loved than I am. First, Diana. Now Catherine. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to be myself and started trying to prove I deserved to be here." Her voice was steady, but there was pain in it. "I took that out on the people around me. I demanded respect I hadn't earned. I confused authority with value." She looked directly at him. "And I was wrong." Micho didn't know what to say. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Camilla said. "I don't expect it. But I wanted you to know that your refusal that day, as much as it hurt my pride, taught me something important. It reminded me that titles don't make someone worthy of respect. Actions do." She stood. "I've implemented some changes in my household. New protocols. Better treatment. It's not perfect yet, but it's better." Mitchell stood as well. "Ma'am, I appreciate you telling me this. I also wanted you to know that I've recommended you for promotion. You're being considered for a senior position in the Royal Guard. The decision isn't mine alone. But I've made my support clear." Mitchell was stunned. "Ma'am, I don't understand." Someone who has the courage to say no when it matters is exactly the kind of person who should be in a leadership position. The kind of person who will protect the integrity of this institution, not just the people in it. Mitchell shook it. "Thank you for holding me accountable, Sergeant, even when it was difficult. Especially when it was difficult." She left the room quietly. No fanfare. No drama. Mitchell sat back down, processing what had just happened. 3 weeks later, he was promoted to lieutenant. His new role involved training younger guards and establishing standards for professional conduct. His first training session included a simple message. Respect is earned, not demanded. No matter who you're working for. The story of the guard who said no became part of palace lore. Not officially. Not in any written history. But in the quiet conversations between staff members. In the way people treated each other. Kate never publicly claimed credit for standing up for Mitchell. She didn't need to. Everyone knew, and the impact rippled outward. Other staff members found their voices. Standards improved. The culture shifted, slowly but surely, toward something better. Camilla and Kate would never be close. Their relationship remained professional, cordial, but the open tension eased. They appeared together at events, smiled for cameras, did their duties, and occasionally, in private moments, they found common ground in unexpected places. A shared joke about media absurdity, a mutual frustration with protocol, small moments of humanity. It wasn't friendship, but it was progress. The monarchy, that ancient institution, learned something important that year. It learned that change doesn't always come from grand gestures or official proclamations. Sometimes it comes from one person, in one moment, saying no. From choosing dignity over convenience, from standing up for what's right, even when it costs everything. Mitchell continued his career for another 8 years. He was there when George started his military training. He shook Prince Louis's hand at his first official event. He watched Charlotte grow from a shy child into a confident young woman, and every single one of those children knew his name. Because Kate had taught them something their great-grandmother Diana had understood instinctively. The people who serve you aren't beneath you. They're beside you. And the strength of any institution isn't in its titles or its traditions. It's in the people who believe in it enough to hold it accountable when it fails. On Mitchell's last day of service, before he retired to spend more time with his family, Kate came to his farewell ceremony. She brought a personal gift, a framed photo of that rugby event in Cardiff, the one that had started everything. She'd signed it with a simple message. Thank you for reminding us what matters. With deep respect and gratitude, Catherine. Mitchell hung it in his home office, next to his daughter's piano recital program and his commendation for distinguished service. Visitors would sometimes ask about it, about the story behind the photo, and Mitchell would smile and say simply, "That's the day I learned that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it." The palace stands today, ancient stones and modern values, built on the backs of thousands of people whose names history won't remember. But the people inside those walls remember. They remember the day everything changed, the day a guard said no, and the day a future queen said yes to standing up for what's right. That's the story that matters. That's the story that endures. Not in headlines or history books, but in the quiet pride of people who know that sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest change. And somewhere in those halls, on quiet mornings, you can still hear the echo of expensive heels clicking on marble and the sound of someone choosing dignity over compliance. It's the sound of progress, one small step at a time.